Hi guys, you are welcome back once again to another interesting tutorial. But before we continue, I would like to say thank you to all my subscribers. I really appreciate the love you guys have shown me so far. Thank you to the people that viewed and did not subscribe. I would like you to subscribe to my channel. Okay, so let's get started. So here is my back piece and I have my loops. I'm going to put a description in the description box on how to make a loop. You can watch that on my channel. Okay, how to make a spaghetti loop. So now this is a blouse. This is the back of the blouse. As we know that our lining is usually shorter than the actual fabric. So that's why I've gone ahead to sew down my lining first so that I can get the actual length for the blouse. Okay, so you have to sew down the hem of the blouse before you proceed. Okay, so now I'm just marking half an inch on the neckline. So that half an inch will be a guide. Okay, so I don't sew my loops on the neckline. So now my loop is going to be 1 inch. I'm using 1 inch for my loop, and for the space in between my loop I'm going to be using 1.5 inches. If you don't want any spacing on your loop on the blouse, you can just go ahead and continue with your 1 inch all the way till the end. Okay, but I want 1.5 inches for my loops. So if you want 1 inch for your loop spacing, you can as well mark 1 inch for your loops, 1 inch for your loop spacing. So it depends on you and it depends on what you want to achieve. Okay, but I want 1.5 inches for the space in between each loops. So now I'm done marking this left side of my back, and I'll show you the other side. I've marked the other side as well, so I'm just placing them beside each other to check if they align, and yes, they align. So I'll put that aside and work on this part. So I'll open up my lining piece like so, and then I'm going to start sewing down my loop. I will make sure that my loop does not exceed that 1 inch I marked for my loops. Okay, so when sewing down your loop, you will notice that there's a seam line, okay, showing on your loops. Okay, so you make sure that that seam line is facing you and not facing down. The seam line has to face you so that by the time you are done, the seam lines will not be obvious. Okay, so for the loops now, you can see how I turned the loop, and I'm going to sew that down. Okay, so I want the space, the length for the loop to be 1 inch, because we are still going to sew down half an inch for the lining. Okay, so if you make your loops too tiny, by the time you are done attaching your lining to the blouse, you notice that your lacing can pass through. Okay, so you have to make sure you use 1 inch for the length of the loop. But for this part, I'm going to be using my finger as a guide for the loops. Okay, You can see what I'm doing here. You can see 1 inch for the spacing. So I'm just going to place my hand like so, and I will continue. Okay, you can see that this looks good already. So I'm going to continue with the third one, still making sure that the seam on the loop is facing me. Okay, so I'm going to continue and do that till I get to the end of this part of the blouse, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other blouse. Okay, for the other half of the back. So make sure that each loop that you're sewing down is the same. Okay, don't allow one to be wider than the other. So you can see what we have here, as this aligns perfectly and they look good already. So I'm just counting my loops to make sure I have the same number of loops on both sides. You don't want to have 7 loops on one side and then you have 8 loops on the other side. It won't make sense. So here now, this is my modesty panel, and I've gone ahead to iron my paper stay on the modesty panel. So I'm going to be sewing this down on the left side of my blouse. Okay, the left hand side of the blouse. So I'm going to place it just before the half an inch I left for the joining of the neckline. Okay, so and then I'm going to sew this down all the way down to the end of the blouse. You can see this is looking good already. So I'll bring my lining forward like so, and then I'll sew down the neckline using half an inch seam allowance. After I'm done, I'm going to give this a notch, and then I will top stitch. So now I'll close down the sides of my lining like so, all the way down to the hem, and I'll do the same thing for the other side, sewing from the armhole all the way down to the end, and then I'll turn it inside out so you can see what I have there. So now for the right side of my back piece, I'm just going to sew down the neckline like so. and then I'm going to top stitch the neckline. And then from the armhole line, I'm going to close the other side all the way down to the end. And then I'm doing the same thing for the other side now. And then I'll bring this, flip it inside out. So now you can see what this looks like after we are done attaching our loops. It's looking so good, and you can see everything is looking perfect. So now for the back loop, I cut out 2 inches, and I'm just going to sew this down neatly like so. So I like to cut out excess lacing, okay? I don't measure, I just cut out excess. So by the time I'm done lacing, I'm gonna trim out the excess when I'm satisfied with what I have, okay? So I'm going to lace this now and show you what I have. You can see this is looking so beautiful and perfect. Please, if you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching and stay blessed.